So I'm going to show some example projects, and then I'm going to go in depth in one of them. So example projects that I've done in the past are looking at how we partnered with a company called Ignite Play to look at how do we develop a game for health. In particular, how do we make people eat healthy or behave in a healthier way through exercise and nutrition through a game. And we also worked with an educational game company to understand how people are learning through their game design. And also we worked with DARPA to look at crowdsourcing for citizen science using games as an interface. So these are examples of games in the past. The current projects that we're working on are 3 big projects, and some of them are just starting and others are kind of underway. One of them is looking at how do we create interactive narratives with content that is taken from crowdsourcing. We all know, or if you worked on interactive narrative before, you probably will know that developing content for interactive narrative is hard, or it requires a designer a long time to develop all of the differences depending on how people are interacting. So we're thinking about using crowdsourcing as a technique to augment the design process to, so that the developer or designer would be looking at constraints for the crowdsourced stories rather than developing all the story content themselves. Other project, we're looking at how do we understand how people formulate strategies or solve problems within a team-based game. And another one is looking at can we model spy kind of behaviors or or people basically betraying each other in a game, and can that transfer to other environments in real life? So I'm mostly going to discuss actually the Game for Health project and discuss how we're using data or the user experience and how that kind of augments the design process. So if you know a little bit about the health market, I'm sure that most people have used some kind of apps to like look at how many steps are you making during the day, or even to keep up with the nutrition, how much you're eating for breakfast or for lunch or for dinner. There's also gamified apps that have been out in the market that people have used before to help them exercise and compete against each other or compete against your own goals. What we decided to do is basically target a market that none of these have actually targeted, and look at using a theory for more personalization. And the theory that we decided to use was a motivational theory, or an individual differences theory based on motivation. And it's called Self-Determination Theory. It's developed by DC and Ryan. And the idea there is that there are 3 different kind of constructs that control somebody's motivation. And these are what we have, the 3 here. Competency, which is basically competence, how well you're doing against either yourself or other people. Relatedness, which is how much do you relate to the situation or to the person. Autonomy is how much control do you think you have of the situation. And these 3 aspects have been discussed in game design as ways of when you adjust your mechanics to tackle any of these goals, you can actually increase sustained engagement. So we decided to use that to kind of figure out how do we develop mechanics to target more sustained engagement. We wanted to have a game that would be played over not just a week. Like most of the apps that I use, like MyFitnessPal, for example, I would put nutrition information for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day for about a week and 2, and then I stop. So what we wanted to do is build a habit and have that the people actually continuously adopt that habit inside their lifestyle. So we wanted a game that will do that, and we found at that time the game was developed in 2011, I believe, or 2000 and maybe 10. And at that time, Farmville was very popular. And people were playing it for a long time. And specifically the target market that we wanted to target, which are mostly women from ages 30 to 40 or to 50, and suburban kind of environments. And so for that, we decided, well, why don't we just use a formula-like interface or like mechanics that will speak to the target audience that we wanted to speak to, but that will have a spin on it that is a little bit more healthier. So the game company basically developed what they called spa play, which is basically you're maintaining a spa that will have a yoga studio, will have many different things that have specific health aspects. Within the game, you basically earn points for your character that you were developing, or for unlocking different things inside the game. And the way that you earn points is through doing exercise in the physical world and saying that you did it in the virtual world. So you could do things like sparks, which are basically things that are small, like aerobics for 10 minutes, buy a fruit, do burpees 5 times, and that kind of thing. But you can also do quests, which require planning. So you can say, I'm going to go to work, but I'll cycle to work for the next 5 days, something like that. And because they require planning, they require an interface that will allow you to basically say, what is the quest? How do I schedule things? And how do I do it? And then you track every day when you do it. There's also a bonus when you do it with a family member or a friend. And most people actually like to do that together with a friend or a family member. The game also has several ways of tracking progress, so you can actually monitor how well you're doing, and you can compare yourself against other people or friends that you have, or against your own goals. And you unlock different things in the game. So the game continuously evolves so that you have to come back and look at what new things have been unlocked, maybe recipes and other things. The game has a simple reward system. You do activities in the real world that gives you XP or experience points that makes you level inside the game, that will unlock several things inside the game, but also can give you physical gift cards from stores that are catering to the target market that we're trying to cater to. So in terms of the self-determination theory, when we worked with the company to design the mechanics, rewards are more extrinsic motivation aspects. So this kind of talks to competency. But there are other things that talk to competency, which are basically how you look at your visualization of your performance. So you might have specific goals that you want to achieve. So you're competing either against yourself or against other people. So this also speaks to competency. Leveling up your character will be also within competency. And a lot of games actually do a lot of mechanics around competency. But we also looked at autonomy. So there are many different ways of doing healthy behavior. You can walk to work, or you can take the train and then walk the one station in between, so go a station earlier. You can take the stairs rather than taking the elevator. These kinds of small things are in your lifestyle. The game was developed to allow you to do that. So there are many different quests that you can take, and you don't have to do them all. You can do whatever you want. So there are many different ways to adopt healthy behavior that you can customize to your own lifestyle. So this is where autonomy kind of became important. Relatedness is where we discussed things like you can do things with friends, or things with quests with friends, or sparks with friends. You can also compete against your own friends, and you can add your friends and have chats and conversations with them as well. So so this is discussing the theory aspect, and I also discussed the user aspect. How do we get the user as part of the design? So when we came in, we added the how do we use the theory to understand the motivation? But another thing that we wanted to add with our work with the company is how do we use the data to understand how well are we getting to the motivations of different individual differences, and how can we tune the design as we go. Most game companies, like the game company that we're working with, they would put a product out, but they expect to be changing it over time and tuning it to the market that they that have adopted their game. And so we augmented the game with a telemetry system where you actually collect data from the game, and we had a database that would collect all that logs of the information there. And then we developed ways of abstracting this information into metrics using machine learning techniques or other techniques. And then we built a visualization system that will allow us to visualize this data to users, to designers, to the CEO, and so forth. And most of these techniques are discussed in the book that we developed after we finished all of that. So the book is called Game Analytics. But the idea was that, and how we embedded that inside the process was in the very beginning, before the game was deployed, we would instrument the game and then have the user register so that you will have a user ID. And the user ID is what tags all the data. So there is no personal information kept. And then you have, whenever we get data, we then process it. So we have abstraction of the data, or pre-processing of the data, and then visualization of the data, interpreting the data. And as I said, we do usually have interview questions with our users to kind of understand if we interpreted the data correctly or not, and if they have other insights on the behavioral aspect of the data that we had. So we construct interview questions from the data, do the interview, and then analyze the interview, and that will help us understand the data more and also give the designers a little bit more feedback on their designs. So we ran a study, actually we ran several studies on this particular product, but one of them we ran over 7 weeks, where we gave the people the game to play, and we asked them for interviews every week. So they would come for about a half an hour interview. And there were 4 of them during a 7 weeks period. There was a spring break in the middle. So we were looking at several things that the company was interested in. So because the company wanted people to adopt this as a habit, adherence to the game becomes important. So there we wanted to make sure that the people have engaged for enough days for it to become a habit, and they basically embedded it inside their lifestyle. So we were looking at the number of days that they were engaged, the interval between the days that they have played. So if there are gaps, are these gaps consistent? So maybe some people do not have time during the week. They would come during the weekend and then log everything in. And so we wanted to see if that's happening or not. So as it turns out, just like all of the other games, the adherence is not that high. People have played out of the 7 weeks, 8 days in total. And that also has a very high variance. So some people have played more than others. The lengths between logins are also not very consistent. And the variations of that was also varying, meaning that people have not been very consistent. Any one person was not very consistent in the gaps. And also there is a lot of variations between people on how much the gaps were. But interestingly, every time we had an interview, there was a spike of a lot of logins. So there's a spike there because people kind of remembered, oh yeah, I have to play a little bit more, or I have to go in and log in. So we said, okay, well, is there any outcome measures that we can look into? Is there a BMI or nutrition knowledge that they have gained from playing? And as it turns out, the people who did play a lot showed a big effect size in terms of body mass and index, the BMI change. So it was negative. So meaning that it's actually good that their exercise and nutrition habits have actually had a good outcome. And they had a better nutrition knowledge than when they started. And we wanted to see if this is actually correlated with actual exercise that they do in the game, or nutrition that kind of sparks that they do in the game. And as it turns out, it is consistent. So people who did things in the game were the ones who had a lot more probability of losing the BMI and actually gaining nutrition knowledge. So even though the game had low adherence, it did have a significant effect on people's nutrition knowledge as well as their BMI. So it means that they probably adopted certain things and they didn't have to log into the game to do them, and they may have done them afterwards. So we wanted to look a little bit deeper to understand how the users thought about it. How does the motivation angle work? Did they embed it inside their lifestyle? So we wanted to look at things like motivation using the self-determination theory, or lifestyle. Did they actually embed it doing towards their lifestyle, or did the lifestyle actually dictate what they can do for the game? And also we wanted to see if there's an impact of other personality factors like motivational drives from Reese's model, and we'll discuss that in a bit. So interestingly, some really interesting design insights. So we found from the data that people were logging in, accepting a quest to do, and then completing it within the same second. So we were thinking, okay, well then they probably are not doing it. They probably were cheating. So we thought, we marked these as cheating, and we found a number of people doing them. So when we interviewed them, this is what it turns out. One person said, I report the sparks at the end of the day. I can't log in during the middle of the day, and so I go in at the end of the day. And they end up being the same ones every day, because typically in the morning I'll take the bus to work. But like every day, I'm able to check off, get off at one stop earlier. So it seems like they are waiting until the end of the day, go log into the game, then accept everything, and then complete everything at the same time. So it wasn't a cheating pattern, it was just a bookkeeping pattern for them. And this is how they use the game. So in terms of the fit within the lifestyle, one person said, so I did them in a way that I could incorporate them into my daily routine better. So I picked the stairs one a lot because I live on the 14th floor. Going from the lowest one to the top one is hard, but because there is a spark, I could reward myself for taking the stair. So they looked at the game as a rewarding mechanism for doing something that was really hard to do, going 4 floors every day. And so this is kind of like showing how many people did what kind of sparks. So there's the Burpee spark, and there's aerobic spark. So a lot of people did running and stairs and walking, a lot less head rolls, and a lot less the others as well. In terms of the social influence, we found actually a lot of people saying that they wanted more of that. This is one person who said, personally, when I go out to eat, I never go out to eat alone. I'm always with friends, and most of my friends are pretty healthy eaters. And like recently, they are all kind of able to, if I say like, maybe we should all like take it home, even if I make an exercise like, so we have lunch for tomorrow, then everyone kind of says, oh, that's a great idea. So it seems like there is support from the friends, and that's an important relatedness note. So we did some more statistical analysis to kind of understand the impact of self-determination theory on what they said in their interviews have impacted either their stickiness in the game or not. And it seems like the more positive notes were towards autonomy. So more people felt that the game gave them multiple ways of doing different things so that they can embed them in their lifestyle. And that has a positive effect towards the number of active days. So more people who said positive things about autonomy stayed in the game more. And this had a negative effect in terms of like the gap. So the gap was less, so they would log in more. And the more, so the stars here says is significant. So more significant is negatively related to negative relatedness, meaning that people who said we want more relatedness, more social aspects in the game, tended to not stay there longer because they wanted that relatedness. So these are, relatedness and autonomy become really important for that kind of game. So this is just a note on adherence in terms of positive autonomy. And I'm not going to read them all because I'm not sure. I think I'm going over time. So the other thing that I want to talk about is other motivational drives. So other than the self-determination theory, Rees has a individual differences of personality model that's kind of interesting, looking at things like order or curiosity as aspects of individual differences that might drive specific behavioral characteristics. So what we found is that there were effects of two different drives, order and curiosity. So order is a desire to be clean and organized. For these people, you can see here it says strong. So they had a lot, the strong ones in that particular drive had a lot more activities towards like mini games in the game and leveling up, repetitive reward tasks, picking up the trash, goal setting and reminders, the ability to track goals, because they are a lot more on order driven. Curiosity driven, on the other hand, were much more onto personalization. They liked a lot more the activities that are about personalization, or either of the island or the rewards inside the game itself. So when you were designing, I think self-determination theory was a really good method to design with, but I think other individual differences like Rees's model was also a good one to use. So just the major takeaways here is that individual differences in motivation is really good way to think about design, and also to look at your data and understand how different people might be doing different things differently in the game because of these different individual differences. And two theories that we saw as important was self-determination theory and Rees's personality survey.